Thank you for joining, everyone. We are in Open Design Guide Reading Club number 10 already. Building a personal brand is the page that we're going to talk about today. As usual, I'll share the document with our notes. You have edit rights with this link. You're welcome to write things in. I will also do my best to take notes. I'm curious if PaperPsych will join later. He said last week that he had some thoughts on this particular topic. I think, let me see, I think we still have some outstanding PRs from previous pages. Chapter 5 and 6, if you'd like to help review those, you're totally welcome to. If not, that's also cool. And then I'll also share the page that we'll read together. So, but before we read it, just a quick question. Is anything else before we hop in? Any questions, thoughts, ideas? All good? And before we start reading, when you hear Ariel, please go for it.
I'm curious, did the AI make a decision to have this section in the guide, or was it like a human that made the decision for this section? Because I'm really curious about that
was the AI. Like all of this whole page is AI. The table of contents was AI generated, and this page was AI generated fully. And you can tell by the structure of this page too. It's all bullet points. There are a lot of pages. That's Claude by default. It also always likes these bullet point heavy pages. There are many other pages where I said, like, just give me more sentences, please. But for this one, I did not. I don't quite remember why, but this is raw output here. Why do you have that question with this particular page?
The short answer is I don't know. I don't think it's like historically it's kind of not top of mind for people in open source making contributions, like it in the developer side of things, right? If you get famous because you made a really pivotal like piece of open source, then it's sort of like a, what's the word, it's like a collateral damage from having made something, right? So I guess like from an open source ethos perspective, you're like, it's not about promoting yourself, it's about contributing kind of almost like semi-anonymously hacker style, right? So the idea of creating a personal brand as a designer in order to contribute to open source as a designer seems like a confusing concept to me, but I think it's worth having the conversation about. So, but yeah, I think it's needed, but I just have never thought about it before, like in a conscious way.
That sounds pretty good. Any other? That was actually my first question. Like, when you read the title of this page, what do you expect? How does it fit in? What do you expect the page to be about? What does it make you think about? That type of thing before we even read anything.
Sorry, I there's also just one other so when Superbloom runs these community calls for the prototype fund, and the prototype fund funds early stage open source prototypes, right? And one of the things that we run a community call about is branding and identity. And the last one that we ran, we had like 20 or so new open source projects, all like, why should we care about branding and identity? And usually like when they come to us, it's like branding and identity is kind of like the enemy. So like being branded means to participate in commercialization, corporate of like software, and open source is supposed to be anti that. So I do think that there's like this contingent of open source which is again like very anti capitalist branding, and that's kind of what we heard in that community call, which is like, why should we care about this? People, it's the build it and they will come sort of attitude of open source sometimes. Like the goodness of the code speaks for itself when actually they then learn how important branding and identity actually is. But yeah, it's an interesting topic that I think is gently controversial.
What about something that is usually done is this essence of working in public, right? And through working in public, you are in essence building your personal brand, but in a more organic way. And it's more sort of working in public. It's not build your personal brand. So I would just wonder, I don't know if we have a section already about working in public. I think we do. But I wonder if this could be a little bit more leaning towards, um, yeah, is a bit more leaning towards working in public and educating them of the importance of working in public, which builds social proof, which is what Errol says, which then builds your personal brand. Um, yeah, I'm just,
Because, like, thinking about that, I would say that one of the things that people look at my GitHub profile and see how many PRs I've merged as a designer and use that as like a, do you know what I mean? It's like a I can exist in this same space. I'm legitimate. But whether that is part of branding and identity, I guess as an open source designer, I would say well, probably, or maybe it's tricky.
Should we try to read and see what's actually in there, and then kind of come around to this? Anyone would like to? No, this is great. Just trying to keep us on time, making sure we get through the content as well. Anyone want to start reading today?
I can.
Thank you.
Okay, top of the page here, I assume.
Yeah, why personal branding matters for designers.
Awesome. As a designer, your personal brand is like your professional reputation. It's what people think of you when they hear your name or see your work. Building a strong personal brand can help you get noticed by potential employers or clients, build trust with collaborators, establish yourself as an expert in your field, open up new opportunities for your career. Contributing to open source projects is a great way to build your personal brand. It shows off your skills, demonstrates your ability to work in a team, and proves that you can handle real-world design challenges. Onward.
Yeah, what do you think of that one?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, is building off of the ideas that were shared before. I think it's kind of like that. The word brand gets sort of a dirty name and reputation, maybe in some circles, because it's so often tied to like commerce and business and products and stuff. And so this, I think, tries to frame it, even though it's a polarizing word, maybe in terms of like, no, this is like how you come across. So it's more about the identity of ourselves as the worker. So I think that's the right spirit. Whether or not it does a good job, I kind of think if this is for newcomers, it's like managing your reputation, or what you're known for, being a good collaborator, is what some might call like your brand. But I don't mind that intro and framing. I know I respect that it's a polarizing word for some.
And the classic engaging with brands on social media so horrible.
Exactly.
Yeah, to me, it really stands out. Like, this is about getting work, right? It's not about contributing to something because you think it's cool, or you're hacking, or you have some personal mission or values or something. This is like you want to get noticed by employers or clients. And you're also not creating your own project. It's about getting noticed by others. Like, you're not a leader, you're kind of a doer. But it's very subtle. Just choosing slightly different words that say the same thing might even make it okay or acceptable. I think it's very subtle. Any other thoughts on this one? All good. Anyone want to read the next one?
I'm happy to read the next one. Okay. Showcasing your open source work. Your open source contributions are like a living portfolio. Here's how to make the most of them. Create a personal website. This is your home base online. Include a section specifically for your open source work. Write case studies for each major contribution. Write about the problem you solved, your process, and the outcome. This shows your thinking, not just the final product. Use visual storytelling. Show before and after comparisons. Create graphics that explain your design decisions. Link to live projects. If possible, provide links where people can see your designs in action. Share your code or design files. If the project allows, share your actual work files. This shows transparency and can help other designers to learn from you. Remember, it's not just about the big flashy projects. Even small contributions like improving documentation or fixing minor usability issues can demonstrate your skills and commitment. Good stuff. Okay. So I feel like they definitely do cover everything here. I feel that's what's missing here is they're telling you to showcase your work. So basically, I think a better heading could be work in public. But they're not telling you the where. Where should you be showcasing your work? So I think maybe a little bit of information could be added in to where the work should be. I think people need guidance. I mean, the personal website I don't see as being the only place to put all of your work in public. As Errol said, she has everything on GitHub. Personally, for me, I don't have all the things I've worked on my personal website. I kind of have put everything I've worked on just on social media posts. So I guess if I were to go back and collect proof of work, I just go and pull all those social media posts that I've made. So yeah, but I'd love to hear Errol's take on this because I'm interested in how proof of work is built in a way that people can actually find your proof of work as well.
Yeah, I think there's a few. I totally agree with you, Mog, about renaming this working in public. 100%, 1,000%. I also think it might be good to give some more practical advice of make sure you have a GitHub or GitLab profile that isn't empty, right? Like it shows that you understand the basic functions of markdown text. At the very least, or that those spaces exist. But also, I think maybe some other practical tips of if you've contributed to open source projects already, then you can do things like clone or fork those repositories, right? So that they show up in your list of repos. So you can use the functions of forking to demonstrate where you've contributed, or just create a list of links to. But you can also do things what's the word, make sure that the open source project has added you as a contributor in the list of active contributors if there is one. So I think that there's a number of things which are sort of going to help you be recognized that are kind of dependent project per project, but it's almost like a tip list. This section could do with ask for this, make sure that this exists. But I think the steps here are pretty good. Like the personal website, if you want to make one, is good. Writing case studies, actually that's hugely beneficial generally for open source and design, writing more about it. Yeah, I think the list I wouldn't necessarily change, but I would add some more practical steps on how to make sure that you're noticed. What do other folks think though?
I could concur with all that. I think a lot of designers and UX folks neglect the polishing part of their portfolio, or at least rely more on I guess maybe don't put the same depth and work into it or proof of work as the projects themselves that make up it. So it's kind of like this paradox here, which again is totally okay. So just different reflections. I think that makes sense, everything you guys said.
it's also classically a very hard thing for designers to present their own stuff. Making your own website, creating your own logo is usually the hardest thing, because it somehow becomes very existential. It's like, does this really reflect who I am and what I believe and what I do? I would add maybe something. Know why you're presenting your work. Maybe it is you want to get funded so you can do more of it, and maybe then that means you're doing this for potential donors. Maybe it is just because you want other people to build on it and you're having fun or you think it's cool. Um, yeah, you don't have to do all these things. You can do some of those things, the things that you think will help you what you actually want to achieve. So it's purposeful.
I can read the next section if we're ready. Blogging and writing. Writing about your experiences in open source is a powerful way to build your brand. Here are some ideas. Tutorial articles, write how-to guides based on what you've learned. Project retrospectives, reflect on a project you've contributed to, sharing lessons learned. 3. Design process posts, walk readers through your design thinking for a particular contribution. 4. Opinion pieces, share your thoughts on trends in open source design. 5. Tool reviews, discuss the design tools you use for open source work. You can publish these on your own blog on platforms like Medium, or even contribute to design focused publications. Does anyone have thoughts on the blogging and writing section?
I mean, Christoph and I both have a Substack, Christoph is very good at publishing a weekly Substack. With me in my busier times, I tend to do a Substack on a sort of maybe every 2 weeks, sometimes every 3 weeks, depending on how busy it is. When it's less busy, weekly. I do think blogging regularly is helps in many ways, because there's just a lot of stuff that goes on in the background that we might not be able to verbalize because the weeks just fly by. So this is kind of a time capsule approach to just sharing, and people read the blog posts and they often reach out. So I do think it's a good thing to do in general. And there, once again, I don't know if maybe platform suggestions is also another idea. I think you have Ghost, and I think you have Substack as well. Yeah, we both have Substacks, and Christoph linked them in the. Yep.
Something that I've know from my brother, and I think that's kind of more common for technical people, is that if they do something technical and they write how they did it, and then this becomes like the go-to reference in the future for other people who are also trying to do that thing, and it becomes kind of like a source of attention or someone, yeah, and which is incredibly practical. I'm not sure designers really have seen that same mechanism or dynamic happen for designers.
Blogging and writing is such a tricky topic because, so with the designer diary studies, one of the biggest questions at the beginning when the designers were applying to be part of the diary studies was, what if I don't make a contribution that week? And it's like, that's fine. That's part of the process of being part of open source. Sometimes you make contributions, sometimes you don't. And I think from what I've heard of other designers as well, is there's still this inbuilt must have finished, polished thing rather than a process thing. And I think that's the hardest hurdle for a lot of open source designers to get past in multiple ways, which is inclusive of writing, is like that it doesn't have to be fully formed, thought out. Like it can be short, ideas based. So maybe something that reinforces that in the blogging and writing would mean that more of this stuff actually gets published.
Yeah, we could well, we could put, so like the way that I think about my weekly thing, the way it works is that I have a to-do list anyways that I do throughout the week. I sit down Sunday evening, I figure out what I want to do throughout the week. Then every morning I sit down and pick a few things, do them, review it throughout the day. At the end of the day, tick off what I did. And for the blog post, I just copy paste the things that I did. And if there's something that I have an image for, I drag it in. If I have a video for it, I'll drag it in. Then I'll do this. I do this in 20 minutes, right? It's just, and I don't care if anyone reads it. To be honest, it's just like, just make it happen, send it out. I don't proofread it either. But that's a design decision, right? And Mo approaches it differently. She tries to have kind of more complete thought, right? So you can design this activity, and your part of your decision can be that it is rough and it remains rough, right? I think designers, earlier, like you said, they have this sense sometimes that it has to be this unique, beautiful, perfect, amazing thing. But you can set your I don't know, goals or whatever it is. You can just say, no, that is not the point, and maybe that makes it then okay for someone. And we could write that in on this page somewhere.
I like that. Or just like tying it to like any project, it will evolve along you and your career, or something, something like that. The idea it's like a work in progress, but also, yeah, again, it's like marketers talk about brand as like living things too. Not to go that abstract, but I think it's the same spirit, like iterative approach to yourself and your career.
Yeah. So tips on how to make it work, I guess, is the idea. And examples, I guess. I guess examples help because then you're like, oh, I think this is going to work for me. Okay, next topic or more on this one?
Can I take the next topic?
Please do.
All right. Speaking and presenting, sharing your knowledge through talks or presentation can really boost your personal brand. Look for opportunities like local meetups. Many cities have meetups for designers or open source enthusiasts. Online webinars, platforms like YouTube Live or Twitch make it easy to present to a global audience. Design conferences. As you gain experience, consider applying to speak at design conferences. Project meetings. Many open source projects have regular community calls where you could present your work. Start small, perhaps with a lightning talk at a local meetup, and build up your confidence over time. So this section is done well, but I think how to find these communities might be something we can add to it. So for me, finding the Bitcoin design community was based on referral, and I was opportunity to be in a place where someone was talking about it. So most people cannot find these communities, like local meetups. How do we find them? If there's like tips on how to like find these communities or links that we can add at the footer, I think that will make this section more useful.
Very good point.
So I think the intention of this page on the open source design website and the associated repo that populates it, I think the intention was that it lists every event that is just to do with open source design, like not ones that open source design as a community are only the ones that we are involved in organizing or whatever, that it could be like a running list of the events that exist. But I think that became like an insurmountable maintenance effort. But yeah, it certainly could do with some lists of events that exist. Because then what do you do after you read this section is you search for You go into Google and you say open source design meetup, a conference event, and you need somewhere that has a good list, I suppose, that's up to date.
Yeah, I mean, it's they're also, I mean, general open source design events, there are just very few and far between. You might need to look into something more specific around a certain topic, health, finance, I don't know, CMSs, Bitcoin, whatever, like more topical events and conferences based on your personal interest. Okay, cool. Next one, or anything else on this one?
Okay. Networking in the open source community, building a relationship is a key part of personal branding. In the open source world, you can first attend conferences. Many open source projects have annual conferences. These are great for meeting people face to face. Two, participate in online forums. Be active in project chat rooms, mailing lists, or forums. Help others when you can. Third, contribute to discussions. Share your thoughts on design related issues or pull requests. Fourth, collaborate with others. Look for opportunities to work with other designers or developers on open source projects. Five, mentor or be mentored. Many projects have mentorship programs. Participating on either side can be great for your network. Remember, networking is about building genuine relationships, not just collecting contacts.
Yeah, I don't know how it is in other areas, but in Bitcoin, there's I feel like there are several types of conferences. There are the builder conferences where you don't network, you just hang out, you just talk to people, you just bump into everyone, people know each other, or they're super casual, and anyone, smartest people are just there, totally normal, you just hang out. And the conferences where I would say you do networking, those are the ones where you have all the companies being present and there's some expo and you have booths and all of that stuff. And I don't like doing that type of networking. Right, where I'm like, oh, here's my business card and all of this stuff. So yeah, I guess that's a point. I don't exactly know how that would affect this section here, but I guess I'm just saying the term networking can be
I think
interpreted different ways. Please go.
maybe we can better use the heading building relationships. And you can build those relationships however you want. You can also build relationships on Discord because you just like something that someone posted. And then you can just reach out to them and talk to them about the thing they posted. So maybe it's more about not networking, which feels a bit commercial, but we just say building relationships. Because you need to build those relationships to get stuff done, because working in open source is all about collaborating. So I would say revise it to building relationships, the heading, as opposed to networking. That's just my 2 cents.
Make friends.
Make friends.
Connecting with others. I like
Yeah.
building relationships. That's nice.
Yeah.
I think if anyone comes to the open source design contribution sort of space with the idea that they can become famous in some way, they're probably not going to be well received. If they're like, they want to become known in some way, versus like, because it's meritocracy based, right? Like no matter how problematic meritocracy is as a concept, like open source still kind of adheres to a sense of meritocracy. So the more that you do, the more that you will be connected. Often is the anyway. This section is, I think this section is more like open source is about relationships. So even like the minimum amount of like interaction that you do like in a issue with a contribution is, it's just about how much building relationships you want to do outside of like the contribution relationship, that it can afford you more knowledge, it can afford you more access to projects, it can afford you other collaborators. I think what this section maybe is missing for me is like why. I guess like personal branding is this the point, right? But of this page, but I don't necessarily think that people in open source quote unquote network in order to build their you know, notoriety, or maybe they do and I just don't hang out with them.
Yeah, goes back to our very first comments. Yeah, the why, that's a key thing. And I think if we reframe the page again slightly differently, it'll make the whole content more clear and easier to adjust. Quick question. Is anyone here in this group, are you here to build notoriety and build your personal brand? No? Okay. Or some don't dare to say. There you go. Awesome. Okay, so maybe that one's settled now then. Use social media effectively. Anyone wants to read that one?
Hitomi, you've been very quiet, and Paper Psych as well. I'm opening the floor to you guys.
Hi. I was in the middle of I was participating in this session in the middle of this session, so I'm a little bit confusing. What happening? Reading and the conversation. You all had. So please skip me. If I have my opinion, I will put unmute it します。ごめんなさい。Sorry.
Sounds good. Thank you. No worries.
I can read. No sweat. Okay, using social media effectively. Social media can be a powerful tool for building your personal brand. Here are some tips. 1, choose your platforms. You don't need to be everywhere. Pick 1 or 2 platforms where your target audience hangs out. 2, share your work. Post about your open source contributions, blog posts, or talks. 3, engage with others. Comment on and share other people's work, especially within your open source communities. 4, use relevant hashtags. This can be helpful to find your content. This can help people find your content. For example, hashtag open source design or UX design. 5, be consistent. Regular posting keeps you visible and helps build your audience over time. 6, be professional. Remember, potential employees or clients might see your posts.
What do you make of this one?
To me, feels pretty standard and comprehensive. I mean, it might be interesting to see some links to like folks overlapping, whether it is in Bitcoin or the UX community, maybe just like, but that might be a little too, or maybe the Bitcoin design community, or just be like, here's an example. But I like it. Examples are tricky because then you have to choose who to use. But
True. Yeah, I guess I have a problem again with the last one, that be professional. Remember, potential employers or clients might see your post and it's like, okay, we're just gonna do a LinkedIn humble bragging all day. I think the part of the point is that you can be you, right? And maybe it's more about respecting the code of conduct or whatever your the values of open source, or and not professional. But I think that's the if at the top of the page we say you need to think about why you would want to do this. Is it maybe you do, like I said earlier, maybe it's just you want to meet more fun people and fun projects. Maybe you do want to get sponsored. Maybe you do want clients, and all that's okay. And then everything below that, you can look at it through whatever lens you chose.
I agree.
And then some people will say, well, I'm just being myself because this is a personal community here. And others will say, well, I do want to. I have certain clients and I'm in tech or finance or business, government or whatever, and there is a certain way of speaking. So I will
maybe
behave a certain
maybe
way.
it's more about awareness, like because again, be professional. What professional means to some, like you're saying, different industries might vary. So it's almost like dress for the job you want to have. But if this, it's more authentic, open source, more freewheeling, then professionalism might not be the right word. So maybe it's just like remember to be you. Authenticity matters, but also different industries have different standards for online behavior. I think it varies.
I'll try to stay as like mildly spicy as possible in this, but I think this section, you can read it differently if you think about it from a DevRel's developer relations perspective, because developer relations in open source, big open source like infrastructure and organizations, is very dependent on they like have a social media strategy that is similar to like commercial spaces, because it's there's a big like sector of open source sustainability, which is about like the financial viability of open source. And so if you look at like social media usage of like say somebody that's in a DevRel's position at an open source organization, it's going to look very like similar to like a corporate space. Whereas if you look at like hacker vibes spaces, it's going to look more like quote unquote like authentic. So I think like using like probably with most advice around using social media, like if it feels like it meets your own goals, then use it in that way. But I guess like if you're engaging like directly with an open source project that has a social media presence, like you're atting projects, like, and I've seen some like YouTube videos where designers have done takedowns of the design of open source tools and stuff, like design takedowns and stuff like that. So it's really like, is it in the spirit of cooperative collaboration? But it can be very like opinionated, I suppose. I think this section could be shortened to be less controversial and say that some open source projects maintain a social media presence. You can maintain a social media presence too, and it's up to you how you curate that presence. And that this guide doesn't kind of go into the kind of potential like opinionated side of how to conduct yourself in open source. It could just say that this is the realities. Some projects are on here, some projects are not, some individuals are, some individuals are not. Some people post stuff that is like this. Some people post stuff that is, look how many stars my repo got. Look look how many follows my profile has, and kind of use it in that way. And maybe this guide stays like more informative documentation than this is how to do it from a best branding perspective. I don't know. Is that spicy? Was it quite mild? I don't know.
It's kind of mild, I would say.
I can get spicier. I hate it when people are like, sup, follow my repo, star my repo. I've got this many. I'm a GitHub star. Look at how cool I am. I got a GitHub Hollywood star plaque. Like, and it becomes like a competition. Like, there's a lot of like one-upmanship in the sort of social media open source contributor space, and it's like, look how many PRs I made. This is how I became a GitHub star. And it's like, is that what you wanted to achieve in life? Is get a pat on the head from GitHub? I don't know.
It's all about competing in the attention economy.
Yes. But some of those people have got very good, high-paying jobs at open source companies, which is like completely fair play to them. Like, get your bag, like, get your coin. I'm not, disputing people need their living.
Yeah, I mean, I have to, like you said, I have to recorded some videos where I'm going over some project's design and analyze it and try to be, very, very balanced. But I do find it helpful for myself. And there's usually a reason to it. Usually the reason is I'm researching a certain topic and they happen to implement it or so. Or we have these design reviews we call in the community. The way that I think I justify what I post is usually make it very work focused. Like, here, there's something that I think is a good design solution or so, and it would be great if more people implement it. I'm going to post about it. So it's always in the spirit of giving visibility to some idea for that would make things better, or something that does make things better. But yeah, it's just attention for attention's sake it's always a bit weird. Papers like you, I don't know if you can speak right now or not, but you mentioned last week that you had some experience with exactly this.
I did, yeah. So, I mean, this is the specific point that we were talking about, using social media effectively. This is pretty basic access. I mean, info that if you do this, it will lead to success. It's like if you walk every day for 5K, 10K steps, you will get thinner, fitter, better health. So this section is there, but I don't know, like what. Give me one sec. Building a person. So in the starting of the page, did we discuss anything about, like you said, that should personal brands be there for open source designers and stuff like that? Did you guys discuss something related to that?
I'm sorry, can you say that again, the first part?
Like, whether did you guys discuss about personal branding being important for open source designers or not?
So we basically were not convinced that this is the right framing. I mean, it is important that, some people, they want to make a living off of this, or, sometimes you want to grow your project, or you need some contributors, right? And then, because you don't have enough, and then you want to have visibility, and then you need to do these things, right? But the
Yeah.
brand for brand itself, I think we all agreed that that was not the thing.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. If, as I think so, Ariel mentioned that if you're here for doing, like, getting famous, then you probably won't last long. So, how are you guys feeling about this section? Like, should we even have this whole thing, or?
I think it's important because of those reasons. that
In
some people do want to make a living, or they want their project
yeah.
to be sustainable. And how do you get it to be sustainable? Like, people should know about it. They see all the work that's being done behind the scenes, and then you need to post about that. And there are very good reasons for not necessarily building a personal brand, but that being an
Mhm.
activity that you do for another goal.
So, any place do you want to have a distinction between doing personal branding for yourself and maybe doing a separate thing for a project that you are trying to get? I don't see. I don't think it has been mentioned, or has it been that for specific kind of projects you can have different strategy, basically.
I think that's what we need to figure out, right? Ariel?
Like, I think the conundrum here from my internal self is I want designers to be more noticed as a core component of open source. So therefore I would love for more designers to follow like the steps here and be more noticeable. But then it kind of rubs up against but open source isn't about the individual, it's about the collective. And I think that that's always going to be like the harder, or like some people think it's about the collective and the collaboration and not, the project as opposed to an individual. But I would love for us to get to a place where, so for example, there's tons of developers out there that make a living off of like paid contributions to open source. There's enough out there that it's like significant. And I think that's not there for designers as much as developers yet. So I think that that is like a good goal for personal branding to have, is that it can be like sustain a living. It's yeah. But I think this page needs to exist, but it's such a complicated page that I almost kind of want this page to be less like content delivered and more like quotes from designers. I imagine this page as like, how have you, like more of an interview page, like how have you as a designer promoted yourself in open source and why? So almost like maybe this page isn't content as much as it is a series of quotes from designers doing stuff in open source at multiple levels of their kind of quote unquote career stage, contribution stage, and like that being inspiration rather than a set of rules or a list of rules that the AI came up with.
Yeah, I mean, the AI sucks at these human things, right? It just doesn't have that information. And that's why it comes up with these generic lists of tips. Yeah, good consideration. We have about 10 minutes, 8 minutes. Should we just quickly read through the rest?
What is the okay?
Creating a unique value proposition.
Shall I just very quickly read through those two then, just so we can move through as quickly as possible?
Go for it.
Creating a unique value proposition. Your unique value proposition is what sets you apart from other designers. In open source, this could be specialization, becoming known for excellent icon design, or for making complex interfaces user-friendly. Cross-disciplinary skills, for example, combining design skills with coding knowledge, industry focus, becoming the go-to designer for open source projects in a specific field, like education or scientific software. Design philosophy, developing a unique approach to solving design problems in open source. Think about what makes your contributions unique and lean into that. Okay.
Yeah, something I tell people there is the Venn diagram of things that you are good at, things that you enjoy doing, and things that are wanted or needed in your ecosystem or whatever. And if you can find that sweet spot, that's a pretty good one to lean into.
Yeah, and I mean, most of the people that I've met working in open source, they're just following their joy in terms of how they're contributing. And by following their joy, they're finding their unique value proposition. So I don't really know if you need to create that, or if it's more So just that heading that says about creating something, I don't think you need to create it. I think it's doing. So I don't know how I feel about this particular section, but I'll move on to the next one. Balancing personal branding with community values. In open source, it's important to balance self-promotion with community values. Here are some guidelines. Give credit. Always acknowledging others' contributions to your work. Be humble, share your success, but also be open about challenges and failures. Focus on value. Make sure your personal branding efforts also provide value to the community. Be a team leader. Remember that open source is about collective achievement, not just individual success. Stay authentic, let your genuine passion for design and open source shine through. It's important to balance self promotion. I would even revise this heading to collaborative, something like collaborative contribution acknowledgement, and that is not making any sense. Um, but it's, you know, we collaboratively contribute and we mention who we collaboratively worked with. And that's really just basically what this whole paragraph is talking about. And I think something that this misses is that, at least what I've experienced a lot in open source, is that it's very flat. There's no, you know, they mention a bit here about team player, but also just understand that working open source is very flat. There's usually no dictator saying you have to do things this way. It's more about collaborative consensus. So I missed that as a point. This sort of flat way of working. Maybe that could be a point number 6. And that's it. So I hope I've left enough time for the last 2 sections to be read. Benevolent dictator for life. Find your unique. I like that, Errol.
Yeah.
I think it originated out of open source and benevolent, didn't it? Yeah, that term. I can read the last section. So, leveraging open source for career opportunities. Your open source work can open doors in your career. Job applications. Many companies value open source experience highly. 2, freelance work. Your contributions serve as a public portfolio for potential clients. 3, speaking engagements. Your expertise can lead to invitations to speak at events. 4, leadership roles. You might be invited to take on leadership positions in open source projects. 5, entrepreneurship. Your open source work could lead to ideas for your own products or services. And then I'll just read the conclusion really quickly as well because of time. Conclusion: building your personal brand through open source contributions is a powerful way to grow your